Okay, it's been a while since I've done a vlog. Off to see Fay Friedman, the Director of SEO and Marketing at AJH Company. I'm going to talk about SEO stuff. Looking forward to it because it's been a while. I'm driving over to a park somewhere in Newark, New Jersey to meet her with outside. It's a bit warmer today than usual. It's been in the 30s recently, but now it should be around 50, 55 when I get there, so it should be a little bit warmer. And today is the day after Election Day, so we're not sure who's going to win. It looks very close, but it seems like Biden might win. Not making any predictions, but you'll know in this video out who won, and we'll see what happens. So it should be interesting to see. In any event, we're going to be talking about, Faye's going to be talking about, and I'm going to be questioning her some questions around feature snippets, and people also ask how to use content to kind of generate those. And we're also going to talk about some of the most common issues that come up with websites and SEO audits. So it should be a fun conversation, and I'm looking forward to chatting with her. Hope you enjoy the drive, and hope everything is still around when I get back. The COVID infection rates around the country at this point are going insane. New York's pretty low in general compared to the country in the U.S., but still a bit cautious and nervous about everything. So again, keeping these vlogs outside, socially distanced, and hope to do more. Actually, I have no more scheduled right now, but hopefully by the time you watch this, there are a bunch of other scheduled ones out there. So looking forward to talking to Faye. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Speak to you guys soon. Be safe. Bye. I'm almost there, about 10 more minutes, but you know, this is the ride I take when I always go to the airport. I always go through Newark Airport. It's just an easier airport for me, and I fly United. But I'm not going to Newark Airport. I haven't been to Newark Airport in, what was the last event? I think February 2020, so like several months ago. But I will be driving by it, waving, and not getting on a plane. Although people are flying these days, so which is scary, but I guess the truth. So we'll see what happens, and hope again you enjoy this interview. So I'm here with Fay Friedman. Thanks for coming out to this park. What's it called again?
Branch Park.
Branch Park in Newark. There might be planes flying over us, but there's probably not so much plane traffic today these days anyway.
Yeah, pretty quiet.
Please tell people who you are in this camera over here.
Sure, my name is Fay Friedman. I've been doing SEO for a little over 10 years. I spent a little bit of time doing it on my own. At this point, I work completely in-house as Director of SEO and Marketing at a property management company called AJH. Before this, I spent the bulk of my time really doing e-commerce SEO. And it's a whole new world, but I find that the basic foundation of SEO holds true really across the board. You know, obviously local is a little different from e-commerce, but at the end of the day, good quality work, that's all that matters. And
you told me you started in SEO about 10 years ago in 2010. Yeah. Has it changed a lot for you since 2010?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The way I got into it actually was like a little backwards. I started because I love writing, and I started out writing for somebody who does SEO, doing his content. And some family members heard that I was doing this, and they came to me with issues that their sites were having, that they were completely not being found at all. And when I looked into it, I realized that they were victims of negative SEO, unfortunately. Pretty shady stuff going on, and it was so hard. They had manual penalties, and it took me around 6 months to get their sites back into the index and everything back where it should be. And that kind of opened my mind to the power of SEO and all that we could do. So that's where I started. Over the years, what I've learned is that was like a great intro kind of for me, but how important it is to do things right, because it's just not worth it the other way. But yeah, Google has definitely gotten better at making sure that people stay on the straight and narrow. That's what I think.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember like when I first started to see the power of SEO, this is like the early days, like when it was super easy. And I'm like, there's nobody in the world that really ever should mess with an SEO, because they could ruin their lives forever.
Exactly.
I mean, the search results, the reputation can be destroyed. Now
Yes.
it's a little bit harder, I guess, because of all the mechanisms Google has in place for that type of stuff. But back then it was like you could rank for anything and anybody, and ranking for somebody's name was super easy. So I guess that's a really good way to get into the SEO business. Is to,
yeah, I saw like the dark side, and that convinced me about how important it is to do it right.
Cool. So I'm just curious, because you now in property management, right?
Yes.
And you were in the e-commerce space. So what's like the biggest difference between the two in terms of SEO?
So what's interesting is that I thought coming into local SEO would be so easy, slam dunk. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. Because there's definitely a different dimension there. However, I think e-commerce is much more nuanced. You need to have a lot more of a foundational knowledge about the technical stuff, the pagination, the filters. There's so much more, the actual site hierarchy, there's so much more that goes into it, where I think with local SEO, the actual site is not as complex, so there's much more room to get creative with your backlinking and your off-site link building. Whereas with on-site, with e-commerce, we spend so much time on the on-site stuff that there's less resources available for off-site backlinking.
That makes sense. Because there's all the product descriptions, making blog posts, photos, and all that other stuff.
It's just such a bigger, more complex site.
What do you like better, you can't say?
That's a good question.
You don't have to answer it.
Excuse me. I'm not sure. Okay. Right now, I would have to say I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's get into the topics you want to talk about. First topic you want to talk about was audits and all the problems you see when you do an audit for a website and what the most common issues are.
Yes. So I put together for myself a few pointers so I should remember. I just flipped through some of the audits I've done recently. I do on the side some auditing of websites because I feel like many times, as we discussed before, you'll have a website that's built, a client who put thousands of dollars into building a site, and then they'll be like, optimize it for me, and it's not optimizable sometimes. So I feel like sometimes that audit is the first step needed to create that perfect machine that then you can optimize. Some of the most common things are the basics, the metadata, unique page titles, unique meta titles and descriptions on each page. That a lot of times there's duplicates, too long, too short, getting truncated.
How often you see like a home page with a title tag homepage?
Homepage, all the time.
Still? Yeah.
All the time. It's just, it's the basics that could be so easily fixed. Then sitemaps and robots files, that's a very common one. Most of the sites that I look at a lot of times don't even have Search Console set up. So the first thing will be set up Search Console, let's get the sitemap submitted, the robots file worked out, then we can move forward from there. Some of the other ones I see a lot. This is a common one. In a more complex site, sometimes the designer is so busy making it pretty that they won't have an effective hierarchy. So you'll have orphan pages or you'll have deeper pages that are so deep that it's just not going to be well optimized. So that's something, a very difficult fix that not always could be done right away, but it's something I try to educate the client about, that you have to keep that, site architecture in mind. Some of the other things, e-commerce. A very big one is, as I mentioned, pagination and filters. So the pagination changed a lot, obviously. It used to be so easy with the rel prev and the rel next tags.
Oh, we thought so.
Right? And now we know it's not as easy, and it just kind of has to be all on one page, and it's a lot more complex now. But that's something that a lot of e-commerce sites don't have handled properly. With the pagination and the filters, you end up with a lot of duplicates, low quality pages. So that's usually a very big job. I would say those are the most common things. When site migrations, improper redirects, long chains, 302s instead of 301s, all that kind of thing. Usually there's a lot of screaming frog, deep crawl, and cleaning up of, improper redirect.
That's always a shame when I see a site doing a migration, which is always a great thing to do because it gives you the opportunity to really build your website. Let's say you have like a 20-year-old website and you have all this legacy content. It's like you said, it's one of the most complicated things is to go ahead and build a site architecture that kind of gets Google to find all that information in a nice way. So when you do like a site migration or re-architecture or rebuild a website, there's your opportunity to say, all right, we're all going in, we're rebuilding this website for the users and for search engines to actually find this content. And often the issue is, obviously you got to set up those redirects. That I find to be the easiest thing because it's like just mapping the old to the new.
Exactly.
Often you just keep the same URLs if it's done right. But the navigation structure is the hardest thing. So if you could find an opportunity where, all right, we're rebuilding the website, we're redoing a redesign, that's our opportunity to kind of say, all this old content, let's revisit it. Should we repurpose it? Should we 404 it? Should we build them into bigger content pages and so forth? Now with passage indexing out here, so they can find it. But yeah, I find, even though, the redirect issue is an issue, it's also a big opportunity for solving the bigger problems, like you were saying, those content problems, the
Yeah.
architecture problems.
So it's a great way to breathe new life into old content that, you put money or time into, but if the redirects are not set up properly, then, it's wasted. So,
Do you have a biggest pet peeve when you do an audit? Like, I can't believe this is
yes,
yeah.
not having Search Console, going back to that. It's like Google is giving you the information, they're telling you what's wrong, so allow them to do so. That's where I usually start.
Search Console, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has Google Analytics, but nobody has Search
No
Console.
one has Search Console.
And that's the thing. I know one SEO was like, Google, everybody's on Google Analytics. Why don't you just auto-verify, once they verify their accounts with Google Analytics, just verify their accounts with Search Console.
It's true.
There is a way to do that,
You
but
could
it should be
link
just
it.
automatic.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why they don't, because then you have all the legacy data, all the historical data, which you're missing some of it when you make a new profile.
Yeah.
So if Google,
absolutely.
you're listening to this, just make it happen. Although they probably can't for privacy and legal reasons, I guess.
Or they could send a notification, allow, don't allow, the same way they do for everything.
I think they did it at one point. They were
Did
testing it, at least at one point. Auto-verifying Search Console sites based on either Tag Manager or
Really?
Google Analytics, something. I
That would
forgot
be
what it
great,
was.
because I sometimes feel like there's so much data, as I said, I'm missing when I
Right.
start.
Interesting. So this morning I was like writing, Google has this great podcast, I'm sure you listened to it, the Search Off the Record podcast.
Yes.
And Gary gave this whole entire long talk about how Google does deduplication
Yes.
and then canonicalization. I don't know if you saw it yet.
Yes,
It was
I
it
did
was just
this morning.
And it really went deep into the checksums and how they compare stuff. So do you have any thoughts about duplicate content and duplication of URLs and so forth?